Charles, Sallie, thank you for joining us. Sallie, you are the US Alumni Senior Manager, I know, at PwC. Charles, you're Managing Director at DLA Piper. We're really glad to have you here today. And whilst we give everybody the last 30 seconds of their settling in comfortably, perhaps you could just introduce yourselves before we really dive into the alumni side of the conversation. Maybe we'll go with ladies first, and Sallie, you can just give us a little introduction to yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Sallie Hinson. I'm part of, as Emma mentioned, the US National Alumni Team at PwC. I've been with PwC about 7 years. Prior to that was with Booz & Company. Prior to that, Holland & Knight, running alumni programs there. I'm based out of Raleigh, North Carolina, hence the accent. And I'm looking forward to this conversation today. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for coming. Charles.
Thanks, Emma. I'm delighted to be here. My name's Charles Severs. I'm a corporate partner at DLA Piper. I've been at the firm nigh on 20 years, and I sit on the firm's management committee responsible for various geographies. But importantly for this afternoon, I'm one of the exec sponsors for our alumni engagement program.
Fantastic. Well, I don't know whether I'm being too strict here and whether I'm going to get told off, but I feel like 2.5 minutes. I feel like we can get cracking. Maybe 1 or 2 things to share with everybody who's joining us today, and for those that listen afterwards so they can see what this is on the screen. We're going to put up a poll, as we usually do, just to help us understand who's joining us today and where they are on their alumni journey, because it gives us a really good opportunity to understand, our people. And of course, we watch this every year. We watch this progressed and mature alumni program being a bit more common than it was a decade ago. And so we've got that survey that we'll ask everybody to fill in whilst we're chatting, and we'll share the findings and talk about those a little bit later on. Sallie, I think I'm going to kick off with you. You're a veritable alumni veteran. You've been involved in alumni at Holland & Knight, at Booz & Co, and obviously now at PwC. A really big question, but maybe how has alumni changed, or how has the perception around alumni changed over what I think is, it must be a good decade that you've been in this world.
Yeah, it's been wonderful and fascinating to watch the transformation. I was in the marketing and communications department at Holland & Knight, and the CMO there had the idea of starting an alumni program, and it was relatively new for law firms at the time. And they asked if I would lead the effort, and I had no idea what I was doing or where to start, but I felt like it was a wonderful opportunity for me to jump in and learn something brand new. And it really put me on this path to alumni program management. I love the work. When I started at Holland & Knight, again, it was the CMO's idea. Attorneys were not quite sure why we were doing this, why we would do this. So a lot of my role was convincing them why it was worthwhile, why there was value in keeping in touch with folks. So fast forward to today, at PwC, we just recently came out with our new people strategy. And part of that people strategy, it includes well-being for our people, development and training, our total rewards package. And then the 4th piece of that is always a PwCer. So we've gone from not being sure why we're doing this or investing money and resources into it to really driving a much bigger program, more resources, and more money put against it. So it's been wonderful to watch that evolution.
Thank you for that. And Charles, you've been at DLA Piper for, I think it's 20 years, which is spectacular. Has building an alumni community always been important? And at what point did you really knuckle down and say, we need a community and we need to do this? And we needed to have a senior sponsor. Was it always sitting with you on day one? Have you had this for 20-year portfolio, or is it a more recent thing?
Far from it. I joined the firm with no clients and a lot of hard work to do before I got to do fun things like alumni. I joined the firm for the opportunity that presented itself, which has been amazing. No, I've really only been responsible for alumni for the last 5 or so years, I guess. And before, it's always been important. Ultimately, as I get older, I realize that law it's about relationships. and you have to build relationships internally and externally, and you let any go at your peril. And as I get older, I realize also that the culture is inextricably entwined with those people. And so we have fought really hard to maintain engagement with people who leave us. As I'm sure we'll talk about later on today, there's huge value in that, both culturally and from a revenue perspective. So it's always been important, but the firm is always, we're never complacent. It's always about how we can be better tomorrow. And we're conscious there's still a lot to do, and there are certain challenges that we have now that, again, I'm sure we'll talk about, that we really need to drive forward with.
Yeah, I mean, I think you and Sallie will probably pick some things up from each other today, and hopefully everyone else on the line will do the same. A quick reminder, people should feel free to pop questions in the chat as they have done. Otherwise, please do use the Q&A tool there. Pop questions in there. Feel free to do so anonymously, or tell us who you are and where you come from, because it might help. It might help us frame the question and the sorts of answers we're looking for. My goal is to have a really good chat with Sallie and Charles for the first half an hour, and then let's make sure that we take lots of the questions that you all have on your mind. So Sallie, I mean, maintaining an alumni network, you're not starting from scratch. DLA Piper not starting from scratch, but can you talk a little bit about the alumni experience? What are you offering to alumni, and the concept of value? Ultimately, this is a two-way relationship, right? How do your alumni get value from the network? I'd love to just understand that for such a big organization like PwC.
Yeah, a lot of it, I mean, I think first starting with looking at what exactly they want, depending on level, location, industry, and being able to narrow down what exactly they're looking for. And we do that through surveys to them and also panel discussion. So one of the things I would recommend is asking them first what they're looking for, and then focusing on delivering that to them. We know just from conversations, and it tends to be the same sort of feedback every time. They want to be connected to each other. So that's things through like networking events and being in the room with people who are doing the same things that they're doing. They want to be celebrated. So looking at what their career trajectory, where they are, where they're going, and celebrating that with them. They want to be inspired. They want to be up-leveled, so offering a lot of career support for people who are not yet at that C-suite level. That's a really important piece, and something that they've asked us for. And so I think knowing what they're looking for and then building programs around that is really key.
And what type of events do you do? Are they global? Are they local?
Yeah, for the US, we're doing mostly local. If they're in person, we're hosting those by market, typically. There are some that are more content-driven, practice-driven, industry-driven, and those tend to actually see better attendance. And then we also have, just with the pandemic, we shifted to a lot of virtual alumni events too, so bringing those people together. But we are hearing that they're hungry for that in-person connection again. So we'll be shifting back to that soon.
And the types of programs that you're doing to enhance the alumni experience. I mean, presumably when you started with your first alumni program, it was a sort of spreadsheet and you had a lot to manage. Yeah. You're able to be more strategic now. What's an alumni program look like now that it looked that you weren't able to do?
Yeah. I mean, it all goes back to the data, right? Like I remember 10 years ago, I did not have the insights that I have today around what they're engaging with, what they're showing up for. I mean, I'm constantly going back to that to review and then pivot if I need to on what I'm offering and how I'm enhancing the program, what they're looking for, what they're engaging with. So and 10 years ago, I was kind of in the dark about what needed to be done and guessing at what they were looking for and wanting. And now I feel like I have a better grasp on what that is, what that looks like. So data all the time.
and just to pick up on that, if I may, Emma, I couldn't agree more that you can't actually make an alumni program work unless you take the views of everyone who matters. And of course, that means that alumni matter, and you need to have them involved, and you have to take feedback from them. And for us and for PwC, I'm sure, because we're a global law firm and we're full service, we have lots of people doing lots of different things across the globe, and to be relevant and contextualized for everybody is a real job. But if you're not going to do that, then you're not doing it properly. And that's a never-ending process, I think. We have a program, many of our alumni are obviously in-house lawyers. And we have a program called WIN, What In-House Lawyers Need. And that's a learning, knowledge hub, forum hub. And we've had 27,000 odd people to events over the last few years. And that is obviously not relevant to everybody, but in terms of maintaining knowledge of the sector you're in, and maintaining knowledge of what's happening with the people you're working with, maintaining knowledge of the law if you need to in certain areas, that's a fundamental tool. And we're using that in tandem with our alumni program particularly for our in-house lawyers.
Yeah,
and sorry, please.
Just sort of related to that, as I was thinking through this conversation today, and what we do a lot at PwC is looking for what your company's superpower is, right? Is it the content? Is it the thought leaders? Is it training that's already offered? And looking for ways to leverage what's being offered internally to that external, extending it to that alumni community. So it's already built and there, and they might be at a place now that doesn't offer the same kind of training resources that they were able to get at PwC. So thinking about how to extend that to the alumni population.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, the thing is that you've built that relationship. And so to not maintain it and to not offer, which doesn't really cost a lot and isn't a lot of hassle. Yeah. It's in many ways, it's like, it's not even leaving scraps at the table. It's just leaving a whole meal there. It's just, it's useful for alumni. It's useful for the corporate. I think, community is a real superpower. And I think that maybe that hasn't quite yet been adopted at the right level of all corporate agendas, because strength in community, strength in an army to help you deliver on the things that you want to do, as well as advocates and friends. And Charles, a question for you. So I mean, when we all shop or use an app or whatever it is we do or we're learning, we are used to a relevant and contextual experience, as you said, right? It draws us in. Just outward bound, one directional conversation isn't really a conversation, right? I'm sure for both of you, my inbox is just a constant barrage of things I need to delete that have not really got anything to do with me. And even if they do, because they're not personal enough, I just simply can't get to it. How do you deal with the fact that you have a lot of different regions? You've got alumni in-house as legal counsel, you've got people who go to industry, you've got non-lawyers as well. What's the kind of purpose for DLA alumni? And can you sort of, and weaved into that, the thing that I'd really love to understand, so you're talking about it today as managing director of the firm, and it's clearly very important on our agenda. How do you resource that? Who's supporting you in making this happen?
To answer that last question first, I mean, there's huge support. It's one of the key initiatives for us, because as you say, it's got to be inclusive, to your point. So we have hundreds of business professionals, lawyers, non-lawyers, lawyers who go in-house, lawyers who go into private practice, and different things, and there are different reasons for maintaining connections with all of them. The key for me, we will talk about it, I'm sure, but people talk about Boomerang hires and the benefits of that and how they fit in better and how they're more culturally attuned when they come back. And we've got some great examples of people who've come back, and we all take great pleasure in when that happens. For us, again, the business of law is about relationships and building relationships and networks and becoming trusted and winning new work. But for me, actually, the reason and the power for all of this is people are our best brand ambassadors. If we get it right and we can make the alumni program reflective of our cultures and our values, and we can have the whole thousands of our alumni talking in their organizations about how we do it and what we do, there's nothing more powerful than that. And the the hiring and the new business is great, but that for me is one of, if not the most important benefits of the whole thing.
Yeah, people have, I think, when alumni means many things, and we've got loads of questions that are coming in, and we will dig into some of the ones that I have, and then we'll pick those up. But what is an alumni was kind of touched on in one of the questions. These are people who, we have to be honest, not everybody loved everything about their job. Some people were there for 6 months, some people were there for 6 years, some there for 30 years. But typically, whilst we are all in our jobs, we have some sort of experience that we feel fondly about. My first job was at McDonald's. I was 16, worked there for a year and a half. Can I honestly tell you that I loved making burgers and fries? Probably not so much, but I had a great time. I'm still friends with the few people I work with. My first boyfriend I met at McDonald's. So I have association with the brand that comes solely from having had part of my personal journey there. And the same for the other large companies that I worked for thereafter. So I think, that bond, it's something that it's a wasted opportunity in many ways.
I couldn't agree more. That level of it, you never lose it. I mean, you think about your friends from school or from university or from prior roles. The investment you make and they make in it over at the time and in the future is fundamental. So I think making sure you get your views across and you make it relevant and you demonstrate that you are prepared to invest. It's also for people who are still at the firm. I mean, I think there's stats, and you'll know these better than I do, about how people prefer staying at a firm where they can see people are looked after when they leave. Again, you invest in the firm's culture. So this is why it's so important to us and to so many other people.
Yeah, and the conversations, even with when they start recruiting folks, it should be, we have this alumni network. So even if you don't stay at PwC your full career, there's still that support after you've left. We invest in you while you're here, and we invest in you after you've left. So,
and Sallie, in that regard, how do you innovate in an alumni program so that people are getting a good experience? They are excited to learn that it exists. They occasionally want to come to an event or read some research or read up on someone who left that's doing something really, really interesting. How does that innovation piece fit in from your strategy?
The innovation, I mean, again, it's going back into the data and what we see there and what needs to shift. I mean, we have a platform now. We look at what people are engaging with and what sort of events or content that we can present to folks that they're not getting anywhere else. Like the inspire piece that they're looking for is around like different events, different resources, what our people at PwC can deliver that they can't get anywhere else. So I think a lot about, our people jump between the big four. So how is the PwC alumni program going to be different than the Deloitte alumni program or the KPMG or the EY? What about PwC can we bring that those other three can't bring, and then delivering on that?
100%. And Charles, for you, do you do things on a regional basis? Do you do things on a lawyer, not lawyer basis? I'm sure a lot of your former colleagues are now legal counsel at some of your customers. How do you pick your different audiences?
It's changed. It started, I think, on a local basis, and people who cared about it locally in certain jurisdictions came up with an alumni program. And then, of course, we said, this is crazy. We're a global law firm. We need to have an umbrella project. It's important to everybody, and people move within the organization. So it doesn't work just to be local. So we have an umbrella platform across the firm where we have things that are relevant to everybody. And then, of course, you have to allow contextualization and relevance for different people in different jurisdictions doing different things. And as you know, the key thing for us, of course, is we started, as you talked about at the beginning, with a spreadsheet many years ago, and that's all you could start with. And then we have, you have your own internal technology solution, which is where we are at the moment. And then the next step is, are we doing everything we can in order to make this relevant and exciting for people and want them to be proud to be alumni? The answer is no, and we're looking at taking the next step.
Yeah, and there has been a question about platforms people are using. I think ultimately one of you is a client and one of you we're having great conversations with. So we will pass on that. But Olga, if you've got questions about that, that feels a bit too PR-y for me to ask those questions. But I'm sure that Sallie and Charles will welcome a message on LinkedIn afterwards or something in that regard. The reality is that we all go to people for help with what we need to do. If I need legal advice, I go to DLA Piper. If I need advice on accounting and consulting, I go to PwC. We know what Enterprise Alumni does for a living. Sallie,
Yes.
a question for you, and actually we've got an enormous amount of questions I'm getting directly in the chat and in the Q&A, so maybe we'll just take one or two more each directly, and then let's head on into some of the things that people are thinking about when you're both talking. Can you talk to us a little bit about what your goals are for your alumni program this year?
Yeah.
Can you shape some of that for us?
Yeah, and the things that we're thinking about, I won't speak specifically to the goals for FY23, but the things that we think about, and I recommend other folks thinking about, is to operate with a 360 view of your alumni, because a lot of your alumni are potential customers or they are customers, and looking at what they're getting from the business compared to what the alumni program is sending to them. So looking at that person as a whole person, as a contact for your company. Also thinking about alumni as an extension of the firm. So for a long time, it was, we've got this internal community and then the external community, but really looking at that as the alumni are an extension and trying to bring them under the tent as often as possible to know what's happening within the firm, being the first to know what's happening there. Of course, creating a program and content that delivers value to them. And I think a lot for this year is, meeting people where they are and making it easy for them to get a hold of this. So whether that's by whatever level they're at, what industry they're in, their location, it needs to be easy and relevant to them. So it's not a one size fits all situation anymore. Leveraging tech, of course, and being more tech enabled. I'm thinking about, people that are getting out of school now, they're digital natives. This is what they're doing, and being able to keep up with that from an alumni program perspective. I had a friend tell me, she's a therapist and she was working with a young client, and she said, well, I'll just send it over to you in an email. And he started laughing, like, no, no more email. We're just doing text. So things are shifting for people. It's not the same as it used to be. So thinking about that and trying to keep up with that. Being able to play matchmaker for alumni, that's another big piece for us, whether that be in their career, connecting to experts in their area. There are all sorts of ways that we can bring and connect people, alumni, to the people that they need to be connected to. Also thinking about making them part of our purpose at PwC. So are there volunteer opportunities that they can get involved in? Are there, gatherings that are more outside of the business scope of what we're doing? And then just elevating that alumni client experience. So looking at the alums who are based at accounts that we're working with. And that's a lot about meeting them where they are. They're working at Amazon, for example. They're a PwC alum. They want to meet other PwC alums. So bringing that group together, bringing content to that group that's working at Amazon that's relevant to them. Those are all the things that we're focused on, in addition to the new people strategy with the always a PwCer. And that's a lot to do with retention, Boomerang, that experience when they come back to the firm, what that looks like for them and what the benefit is for them to come back, and convincing them, this is not the PwC you left, and here's why it's changed. Here's why, there's value in returning to our firm.
Yeah, and Sallie,
so those are a few things I'm thinking.
That's just a few things on the list that it could do. Yes, I mean, well, you're preaching to the converted. We're a community of people who know that. You're right. I mean, it's very clear that this is part of employer branding, marketing, new business for both of your firms, as well as obviously being the right thing to do and creating a community. But you did mention the word boomerang, and of course, LinkedIn say that the average boomerang statistic is 3.5%. Our customers recruit up to about 20% of their workforces from alumni. So obviously this has a recruitment part to it too. Is that the case for you, Sallie and Charles?
Yes, I mean it's. I don't know what I should know what our stats are, but I don't. But we take special pride in having Boomerang hires, and there are lots of them, not just around the world. So I look after Asia, and we've got some great hires that have spent some time away, come back, and as Sallie said, they left for a reason, and some of those reasons are positive, and some of those were negative, and you have to demonstrate that you are different, and you've grown, and you've adapted, and when you can demonstrate that and people come back and say, wow, that really is a change, I'm delighted to be back. There's fewer better feelings than that in the corporate world. And the fact that we can do that, not just in the UK, not just in Asia, not just in the US, is a testament to the constant growth and development we are making. So yeah, it's fundamentally important, and this is not even to talk about the benefits of having people who've been in the business before, and the likelihood that they will do better and succeed because they understand the culture better than a new joiner. They'll integrate quicker. They know the processes and everything else. All of those are important, but ancillary benefits too. So yeah, no, it's one of the three key reasons why we're doing this and why we can lead it from such a senior level.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in there, right? We're skirting through a lot over what's so far half an hour of chat. I've got one more question, and then I'm going to dig in to some that we've got from people on the line. A question for both of you, which we discuss a lot at Enterprise Alumni because we get asked the question, what is alumni? Who are alumni? When do you start engaging them? Now, as soon as people leave, they become a former employee. So we know that bit about offboarding, but what do you have a definition of alumni? What constitutes alumni to you both? Because some companies, for example, say you have to have been with us for over a month or a year. You have to have been at a certain level, but we really believe in inclusivity. I mean, I'm like, why exclude anyone? But we understand some people have reasons for that. Can you talk to us a little bit about what constitutes an alumni for both of you, and then over to the questions?
So Sallie will have a more developed and in-depth answer to me, so I'll go very quickly and leave the real answer to Sallie. But I wrote down 5 or 6 words before I came on this call, and one of those words is inclusivity. I mean, I can't really comprehend why. I mean, you have good leavers, and to be honest, you have leavers that are more difficult, and that can happen after a week. It can happen after 25 years. But I don't see any reason not to include everybody, because ultimately, you can always turn people's views around, and we all, as you have, Emma, highlighted, we have rose-tinted spectacles in relation to many things. You look back in a fond way. So why would you limit the scope of that ability? So no, it's everybody, and frankly, you start the moment you join, I think, because that's about our people will see the same literature that we'll circulate, and hopefully it gives them a warm feeling that we talk about people who are at the firm and talk about people who have left the firm in the same and warm way.
Yeah. And this is something else that's changed in a major way since I've been in this work. We define alumni if they've been with the firm 6 months and left on either voluntary or involuntary, left on good terms. So we are super inclusive. 10 years ago, it was nobody who's going to a competitor. They had to have been here a year, and they were voluntary departures. So it's really changed to be much more inclusive today. And it's my view that I look at even recruits as future alumni, and people that start on day one, talking about that in onboarding, about our alumni network. There's still like some difficulty in convincing the onboarding team, the employee team, that we need to be talking about this on day one. We cannot assume that people are going to be here forever, and we need to normalize having these conversations, and having that knowledge that this community exists makes our job easier once people do depart. So.
Thank you very much for that. I'm going to quick fire take a bunch of questions and get started with those, because we've got a lot here. Bear with me to get through the ones that some of them are repetitions. I think we can cover them all. Charles, questions start off with you. Maybe you can both give me short answers on as many of these as you can. A question from Laura Kamatz, who's at Reed Smith, a law firm. which I guess is one of your peers, possibly, Charles. How large are your alumni teams, and what structure works best for running a program effectively? And I know from my own experience that it changes drastically as you progress through an alumni program. What do you need? When you get to the data, you need someone that can deal with that. But maybe you can give Laura a feel for that journey.
At the moment, I mean, I think the key differentiator, one of the key differentiators, is your use of a technology platform. Obviously, you need more people to manage data sheets and Excel spreadsheets right at the beginning. We are, as I imagine most professional services firms are, pretty lean. We have a leadership team which is representative of the value. So it's not just senior leaders; it's business professionals. You know, we want to involve people who are alumni, and that team is the core driving force. And then we have a team of people who support. It's not a big team. It's a small team of people within a small number of offices across the world. And we're probably talking in terms of support of less than 10 people. And that probably won't be their only role. So we're pretty lean and mean. But technology and the platform you have makes an awful lot easier, because an awful lot of work can be done externally if that's the way you want to do it.
Sallie,
yeah.
thoughts from you?
And for us, you know, in the old days, I was a one-woman show. So now and they were smaller programs, right? The Holland and Knight was around 5,000, Booz was about 10,000, and then PwC engaged alumni, we have around 70,000, so much bigger. But for a long time, our team was only 2.5. But with the people strategy changing, there have been a lot more resources dedicated to the program. So we're up to 4.5 now. So that's where we are today. And it's a lot about providing strategy and guidance to have people on the ground executing those programs, whether it be in the offices or account team based. We have people, we have helpers, and that's one of the things I would recommend to people doing these programs. You really need to build up your internal army, because you typically are a very small team, and there are people that you're going to need across all sorts of departments. So it's HR, it's employee branding, it's offboarding and onboarding. So I really cozy up to a representative in all of those.
Everybody.
Yeah.
You're everybody's friend. Well,
Yes,
I mean, kind of, this sort of goes to one of the reasons that we asked Charles to kindly join us today, and ties into a question we have from Abba here, which is that whole concept of alumni sponsorship. At our end, we find that programs that have a senior sponsor are 3 times more successful. Now, successful is a broad collection of metrics, but it's demonstrably clear. It really matters. Abba's question is, I've just started a new role at an alumni program in a large law firm. Question for Charles: how did DLA Piper decide who should be the sponsor? I want to get a partner sponsor, but the question is who? What's your advice?
I think, like most things in life, I think I became the sponsor because I said I'd like to be the sponsor and I cared about it. And I've had no shortage of people who have joined in the leadership of it. I mean, one of our most enthusiastic and important alumni is our senior partner of, you know, who was at the firm 40 years, who's literally just retired, Andrew Darwin, who is so positive and so proactive in the context of an alumni program. So it's great to have an alumnus who is so well known and so positive about it. But yeah, I think if you ask, there'll be people who are really enthusiastic about it, because there'll be people who understand the value of the relationships and the culture. It came relatively late to me, because we did a value refresh 4 or 5 years ago, and that has had an impact which I never anticipated. It's been amazing, and we are picked up on it the whole time if we get it wrong, and people know and understand in a way that has really surprised me. And you know, the drive to alumni and making sure it's so important, and giving it such importance, is one of the factors and one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons that value refresh. So I asked is the quick answer.
I was about to say, you know, one of my partial life mottos is don't ask, don't get. So I guess that's the short version of the answer, and hopefully that helps, Abba. And if it helps, to tell your senior partner or managing director that Charles is the sponsor at DLA, so surely there should be someone with commensurate experience and corporate clout at your end who's responsible.
I wrote up, just to add on there, I wrote up a job description when I was looking for a partner sponsor for the alumni program. I wrote up the job description and then shopped that around, because I've been on both sides of this where we haven't had a partner sponsor. And then when we had, we moved 10 times faster when we had a partner or someone at the top, advocating for the program. Much easier. So it is key. I highly recommend finding that person.
Yeah, and it's not hard to engage somebody about why this matters, because it's quite personal. It's quite happy, right? No one ever said, there's a story about an alumni who left doing something wonderful. Whatever, it's very human. Question from Emma Wild at Fidelity. How are you adapting your corporate alumni program for the changing demographics of the workforce, and in particular Gen Z and millennials? I know that from our experience and from the metrics that we have about where people go on sites and what people read, different demographics are attracted to different things. Discounts, perks and offers, typically more millennial. White papers, research and learning, typically there's a demographic associated with that. Can you give us a taster of what you've had to either change given this generation or what you've learned from them? Should we start with you, Charles? Some pearls of wisdom from you?
I imagine I'll struggle with pearls of wisdom, but I'll give it a go. I think we're all, in every organization like ours, we're always getting reminded about the different needs and expectations of different generations. We had a really good one actually just 10 days ago, just to reinforce how expectations that perhaps I hold are not expectations that are held by people of different generations. So every aspect of a professional services firm has to change to cater for that, and that's recruitment, that's hybrid working, it's all of those things, and of course alumni engagement is no different. And I think the way you do it, and you're right in terms of the sorts of things that we found people are more attracted to, but I think the important thing is to try and get a range of people who are alumni who come from these generations involved, and that's the only way to stay relevant. I would do a really bad job of saying I attended this lecture on telling me what the difference between a Gen Z and millennial was, and therefore I know, and this is, thankfully for everybody concerned at the firm, that's not how we have to do it.
Yeah, I agree with that bringing in people as representatives of those groups and hearing firsthand from them on what works for them, I think that's key.
Thank you very much for that. We've got a couple of questions from Abby, who's at Fager Drinker, a law firm, and I'm going to kind of slightly blend them and make a suggestion of how we can answer one of them. The question to pose to both of you, but you'll have 60 seconds to think about the answer when I say the second half, is what type of data are you looking at? What are the metrics you're reporting on or using to customize your program? Or perhaps for Charles, what metrics do you want and aspire to and know are really important? And the second thing, and by the way, if I haven't read out your question, I'm trying to keep up with them, but we're taking a note, and if we miss anything, we'll make sure we pick it up afterwards. Was you were asking, Abby, about that job description of internal alumni sponsor, a little bit about what the key factors Sallie was looking for, why Charles has picked this up. So perhaps what we'll do after this is we'll get together a piece of thought leadership. Maybe Charles and Sallie can contribute or give us a quote or a little bit of the wisdom that they've shared here and put it together, and we'll send it afterwards for you to do what you need with it. So you've had your 30 to 60 seconds. What are you measuring? What counts? I mean, Sallie, for you, there's a long journey where data is really vital.
Yeah, I could start, because we have this really ugly Google sheet that has all the things that we're trying to track year over year. It's been super helpful though to see the progress we've made. So we're looking across several different functions. Recruiting is one of them, obviously looking at Boomerang hires, how many people are coming back, and what the cost savings is for the firm based on those numbers. We look at opt-in rates for the program and just the offboarding process in general. to see if they're, constantly looking to see if there are ways we can improve that experience so that we're capturing more people before they walk out the door. We look at how many complete contact records we have for alumni. So how many people can we reach out of our full community? We look at career support. If we've placed someone or found an opportunity or filled a void on their team, we're tracking that. We look at an event engagement. So either if it's a digital alumni, or a virtual alumni event or an in-person event, the attendance rate on those, who's showing up, who's in the room. We obviously, for emails, we're looking at engagement rates there, opt-in, click-through rate and open rate. But also we started doing a bit of testing around the engaged alumni community versus the unengaged, and trying to do, alter that B group a bit to see if we can move them into the more engaged alumni population. So that's been really fun to see. And then social engagement too, on our LinkedIn groups, the firm-wide handles where we push out alumni content. So that's really kind of in a nutshell what we look at.
Just a little nutshell. Sallie, I know you're on a real journey with data analytics, and obviously, we're thrilled to be part of that journey. I think that there are probably two stats that are quite interesting on a very broad level from people when they're thinking about this across their whole business. Monthly engagement, how frequently someone logs in. I think the objective is never 100%. As you don't necessarily need people to be on the portal. You need to be able to reach them when you need them. But it is a good sign, I think, of how effectively a program is working. The second very broad one I thought I'll just pick out two is email engagement, because open rates obviously tell us very quickly how well the targeting is working, how compelling the message is. Excuse me, a stat from our side, I'd say in terms of, one moment, sorry. This is a blooper moment where I was about to lose my voice and cough, but I've managed to pick it back up again. I think financial services for us, where we've done a lot of research, and consultancy and professional services is a really good testament to the level of engagement that's possible, where alumni are prioritized and shown that they are a special group that are being given attention, which is essentially what all of us focus on. We did some research over the last quarter, and for businesses that have a focused bi-directional way to engage with alumni, they have an average of 25% open rates for standard external marketing campaigns, 40% for internal communication blasts, with monthly newsletters and content that's very specifically alumni focused, with a platform, but because the platform allows you to be very targeted, those same clients are seeing open rates of 65 to 75%. So I think it's a lesson that we all know intuitively, which is if you talk to people about things that are relevant to them, that matter to them, and show them that they are important, not just in one large blob group, you can really escalate your metrics, and therefore measuring those against the business metrics is a really great way to show success, because we know they're going to look good, right? So it's a good piece of feedback to give to senior management, if you're in the early days of an alumni community, as to why this really matters, right? These people are engaged. Charles, did you have anything on that tough question?
Yeah, the data analytics is one of my other pet subjects. The value of data in firms like ours and professional service firms is so huge, but the ability to mine it in a way that's useful and valuable is much harder. And so I was thinking, when Sallie was talking about what we can measure, and we can measure many of the things that Sallie can measure, and we do, where I think we've got to do the work is actually, what do we do how do we use that data in order to change? And that's where we've got to do some more work. That's where the focus is. How do we make sure that we analyze it in the right way to drive change which benefits the program? And that's the current big job.
Yeah, well, indeed. And you can, you put people in a bucket, if they're already somewhere, then that's a good start. But then to really understand how to, what to do with them, you need to own that information. And as you say, Sallie, in sort of the past where maybe that information was on Google, obviously amazing, very proud that Google are our customer, but ultimately you don't own that information. So, you want to be owning the information. And I think that's a real theme of some of the questions that are up here.
I mean, to put it in real life terms, Emma and Charles, like one of the examples that for our data, we looked at the opt-in rates as people left the firm, and it was relatively low. So we went back to see, what does that offboarding experience look like? Is there anything here we can change? Can we surface that alumni survey or questionnaire opt-in opportunity earlier in the offboarding process? And so we shifted that and then did see a change and an increase in those opt-in rates. But it's also, I think, a challenge because you have all that data to prioritize what you're going to look at first and what you're going to try to shift first. For us, it was the opt-in rates because obviously we needed more people into the program. So we had to stop the bleeding there before we could move on to the next piece of data.
Yeah, big jobs, but ultimately, as we all know, if you can measure it, you can start to address either fixing it or improving it. We've got a couple more questions. I've got some on my list as well. One of the questions that I've got here, Charles, can you talk to any differences between alumni communities in APAC, the Middle East, and elsewhere? We have international perspectives that join our webinars that are very interesting and compelling, but we tend to find that people like to be localized in their community. Any nuggets that you can share in that regard?
That's a tough one, and there clearly are differences, and understanding local cultures is fundamental to a global firm. When you walk through the door of any of our offices, I want you to know it's DLA, but I also want you to know it's that you're in the country you're in, and that's been one of our huge strengths, but it's a constant challenge again. And the same is true of an alumni program. So where we have a local alumni program, which I won't necessarily know the detail of, that is obviously honed to that particular jurisdiction, and we've got to overlay the umbrella on top of it. There are key differences in terms of the sorts of things people want to hear, the sorts of information they want. Language, I don't. If I'm a Japanese alumni, I don't want to be. I want it in the Japanese language, not in. All too many alumni programs just roll out in one language, and that's one of our next steps for us. So I want to make sure that we demonstrate we care about people on the ground wherever they are, and that's about honing the offering. It's about making sure it's localized for language, it's contextualized so that you are linked with the people who left your office at the same time or similar times that you left, and that you did the same sort of work or you came from the same sort of place. So in those respects, it's different but the same. Yeah,
we all like to be with like-minded people, and exactly right. It's not a surprise. I suppose you've got to start at the top, right? We talked about the journey of teams. If you're a team of one, like Sallie was back in the day, you have to do what you have for the time and resources you have available. So if all you can do is have something global, that's a great start. But the journey, I guess, and Sallie, you and your team are an example of that, is when you really start to micro focus on regions, verticals, skills, and that's the journey, right?
And the global aspect, so we have firms all over the world, and we sort of had been operating in a silo depending on our territory. But in the last couple of years, we built an informal global alumni leaders network. So having touch points with all of those people that are on the ground in our territories, driving these alumni programs and doing things like pulling together a global alumni brand so that we all look the same when we're out in the market. Sharing learnings from different territories. There are things happening in Germany or Australia that the rest of the network can learn from. So it's been great to have that internal network of people, but also trying to stay consistent with the PwC brand and global alumni program.
Fantastic. Thank you. I guess time flies when you're having fun. I've got a couple of questions here, but I should probably...
Everybody listening is having fun.
Well, they're still here. Here's the news. They're still here. There's one less person who actually sent me a direct message saying, "I'm really sorry, I have to go, but I'll watch the message afterwards." So you are pulling the crowds in, Sallie and Charles. I'll pick a question that I guess is really, again, quite broad, but takes us towards some last questions, which is, for both of you, where does your program go from here and what are your future plans? So, presumably you're thinking about 2023. Sallie, you talked about the reality that people want to get back together again. Have you got anything you can share about, what's next?
I think for us, it's being more targeted and meeting people where they are, whether that be in their career, like their level, industry, location. So giving that customized experience to the alumni that we're most interested in. So that's also an important piece. It's like slicing and dicing the data and being able to focus on the groups that matter to your business. I mean, it's not a very nice way to put it, but that's how we've had to. I mean, our program is massive. So being able to identify people who are important and not just people in that C-suite level. I feel like, and this is across all the companies I've worked with, they like to engage with those people once they're in the C-suite, but kind of backing up and looking at people before they get there who are on the track to that C-suite level, and what are you giving to them and how are you building that relationship with them ahead of them getting to be that decision maker or influence at the business. So tapping into that.
Thank you. Charles, anything?
Just very quickly from me, I think it's twofold really. The first is we need to deliver a new technology platform that enables us to be better and more analytical of our data. And obviously in the world we've been living in, there is absolutely a need for people to meet and collaborate locally. And we're seeing that across the firm. That's not just an alumni thing. That's a meeting and greeting people you haven't seen or potentially for years. And that's more important than ever. The thing about alumni, depending on where they are, is some of them operate in small silos and they don't have networks, they don't have fora in which they can share concerns or discuss issues. And that's one of the key values. And if you can do that in person at this now, then there's real value to that. People are desperate to do it.
I mean, one thing that's keeping me up at night, and I'd love to have conversations with people who are thinking about this too, is because work has changed so quickly, especially with the pandemic, more people going virtual. Like what does, it's not like we're going into the office, or at least at PwC, we're not going into the office 5 days a week. We're not building the same types of relationships that we were 5 years ago. So what is the impact of that kind of shift in work on an alumni program? That's what's keeping me up at night. How are we going to have to adjust based on what the workplace looks like today?
Well, I mean, the building block of that is that you're in touch and you have that relationship, so you're getting that information back, right? You can't, I always say in life, in alumni, you can't be everything to everybody, but by maintaining that connection, you through the pandemic were able to communicate with a huge pool of people, and everybody needed community, and that was one thing for them. And we all lean on different groups at different times in our career, so that it's something that you both consider to be critical to internal and external culture. Frankly, feeds into everything, says it all.
Absolutely.
I know that we've got about 17 seconds left. We've got a collection of questions, bits of feedback, some that are in the chat, some directly to me. I know that I haven't been able to ask you all the questions on everybody's mind, but we've covered a lot of the questions on a lot of minds. We will share some of the information I put in chat to the people that have asked for it. Sallie, Charles, thank you very much for your time. I think you've given everybody a lot of food for thought and reminded us all that there's sort of hard work and senior drive behind this when alumni has done its best, but also recognizing in particular, Sallie, from your short story that you were able to touch on today, that, you started with, much like a business, right? You started with not very much time, not very much resource, and essentially it's a journey. So hopefully everybody at different stages of their journey has got a little nibble today of something they find useful. Charles, Sallie, thank you very much indeed, and thank you to everybody on the line who's joined us today. Really, really valued that. Have a lovely afternoon, morning, wherever you are in the world, and speak to you all soon.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Enjoyed it. Thank you.